The F1 is over 50 years old, and a vast number of drivers and teams have competed in the championship since its debut. Whatever the case may be, all teams have contributed to developing what we know as Formula 1, one of the most popular sporting events on the planet. The rivalry has always been fierce, and there has been a Constructors' Championship in addition to the Drivers' Championship since 1958. So fasten your seatbelts, because in this video, we are going to be looking at the most successful Formula 1 teams. So let's dive in. Coming in at number 1, Scuderia Ferrari. Ferrari is the most well-known automobile brand globally, thanks largely to its involvement in Formula 1. Ferrari made its Formula 1 debut at the 1950 Monaco Grand Prix and has competed in every season since, becoming the championship's oldest and most successful team, having won the most Drivers' and Constructors' Championship, as well as the most victories, podium, pole position, and fastest laps. It is, without a doubt, the most famous team in Formula 1. Ferrari is synonymous with Formula 1 and vice versa. Therefore, it's no surprise that it's the only F1 team with veto power. Most children aspire to be members of the Prancing Horse Squad when they grow up. Juan Manuel Fangio, Michael Schumacher, Niki Lauda, and Kimi Raikkonen are just few of the legendary drivers who have competed for the Italian squad. They have had dominating times and not so successful and trying times throughout their 70 years of racing in Formula 1, but they have always conquered the hurdles and stayed in the sport. The 1980s and 1990s were the team's darkest years, with only 3 constructor titles and no driver titles in 20 years. Still, from 2000 through 2004, the Maranello team's most brilliant days were spent with Michael Schumacher, with whom they won every possible championship. They are currently in a scenario similar to the 1980s, with Kimi Raikkonen winning the last world championship for Ferrari in 2007 and the last constructor titles in 2008. But we all know that Ferrari will return to the top, as it usually does, and this could be the season. Coming in at number 2, McLaren. Unlike other great F1 teams in the past, such as Ferrari, McLaren is known for producing only the chassis and buying engines from other manufacturers such as Porsche, Ford, Mercedes, Honda, or Renault. McLaren has also created racing cars for numerous competitions as a manufacturer. It was formed in 1963 by Bruce McLaren, a New Zealander who had raced in Formula 1 with Cooper since 1959 and with his team since 1966. Bruce McLaren won a few races and placed on the podium, but he died in a car accident in 1970 while competing in another event. Despite the death of its founders, the team quickly reconstructed and won its first driver's title with Emerson Fittipaldi in 1974 and its second with James Hunt in 1976. The 1980s were, without a doubt, the British team's golden years. Except for 1986 and 1987, they won every driver's title and constructors from 1984 to 1991, with Niki Lauda, Ayrton Senna, and Alain Prost. During this period, McLaren became a great team powered by Porsche and Honda, and drivers like Senna and Prost became legends. They began one of their longest-running F1 alliances with Mercedes in 1996, which lasted until 2014. And with whom they won the Driver Championship in 1998 and 1999, with Mika Hakkinen, and the Constructors' title in 1998 with Lewis Hamilton. In 2015, they switched to Honda, which had been out of competition for several years and has some poor years in terms of result, but has been improving year after year since 2018. In 2018, they switched to Renault engines, which they won a few races. Coming in at number 3, Mercedes. In the 1954 and 1955 seasons, Mercedes competed as a constructor, winning the Drivers' Championship both years with Juan Manuel Fangio and dominating the field. After the 1955 Le Mans 24-hour catastrophe, in which one of their drivers, Pierre Levegh, and over 80 spectators were killed, Mercedes withdrew from the motorsport, including Formula 1. Mercedes did not compete as a constructor in Formula 1 again until 2010. Nonetheless, they reappeared as an engine supplier in the 1990s, first with Sauber and then, as previously indicated, with McLaren, becoming its principal partners and acquiring 45% of the team. They provided engines to the newly formed Brawn GP in 2009, and they dominated the season, winning both the drivers' and constructors' titles. After buying the team at the conclusion of the year, Mercedes returned to Formula 1 as a constructor in 2010, after a 50-year absence. They routinely entered the points between 2010 and 2013 with icon Michael Schumacher and the talented Nico Rosberg, but they could not compete for the championship in 2010. Rosberg earned the team's first 2 podium places, and in 2012 he won the Chinese Grand Prix for the first time since 1955. They signed Lewis Hamilton in 2013, who won a race and finished on the podium many times that season, while Rosberg won 2 races. The hybrid age of the V6 turbo engines began in F1 in 2014, and Mercedes has made history in the sport since then. Since that year, they have dominated like no other team, winning all Constructors and Drivers' Championship until 2020, a total of 8 and 7 titles in a row. With 7 world titles, 6 of which he won with Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton has become the most statistically successful driver in history. Since 2014, only his Mercedes colleague Nico Rosberg, the world champion at the time, and Red Bull's Max Verstappen in 2021 have beaten him. Mercedes' dominant stage, one of the longest in F1 history with no in sight, has elevated the team to one of the finest in the sport's history. Coming in at number 4, Williams. Williams is a classic Formula One team. Frank Williams and Patrick He created the team in 1977, and it made its debut in the Spanish Grand Prix that year. They, like McLaren, do not build their own engines, and instead purchase them. Since 2014, they have utilized Mercedes engines, but historically they have used Renault engines the most, winning 5 of their 9 Constructors' Championship with them. Other engines such as BMW, Cosworth, and Toyota have also been used. Williams was immediately successful after its debut, with Clay Regazzoni winning the 1979 British Grand Prix and Alan Jones winning the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship in 1980. The 1980s and 1990s were unquestionably the team's golden years, during which they won all of their Constructors' and Drivers' Championship. Between 1980 and 1997, the team won 9 Constructor Championships. This was a record until Ferrari broke it in 2000. Like many great teams, they had their seasons of great success and times of poor performance. Williams had not had a winning car since the second half of the 2000s, though they have been able to compete for podiums and a few wins. Pastor Maldonado led them to victory in the 2012 Spanish Grand Prix. They were quite competitive at the start of the hybrid era, with the Mercedes engine finishing 3rd in the Constructors' Championship in 2014. Since then, the team's performance has deteriorated year after year, and it is now one of the poorest cars in the field. Frank Williams has always been the team's public face and served as the team principal until his daughter Claire took over in 2014. The squad sold to a private firm in 2020, which will attempt to resurrect the team's competitiveness. And finally, coming in at number 5, Team Lotus. Team Lotus is one of the most recognizable teams in Formula One history. It will be known for its renowned John Player's special tobacco-branded gold and black livery, which is inextricably linked with Formula One. Team Lotus was a British racing team owned by Lotus Cars and created by Colin Chapman. It competed in Formula One from 1958 through 1994 and remained one of the most successful teams in history. With 7 constructors and 6 driver titles, they competed in various events, including the Indy 500, which they won in 1965 and in 1978. Lotus was known for introducing remarkable advancements to Formula One. They won their first driver and constructors championship in 1963, and they repeated both victories in 1965. The Lotus 25 was the first F1 vehicle to use a monocoque chassis during those years. Their livery became legendary in the 1970s and 1980s. They had competitive vehicles throughout the 1980s, but they weren't good enough to win the World Championship, despite having great drivers like Elio De Angelis, Nigel Mansell, and Ayrton Senna. They racked up a slew of podium finishes and even a few triumphs. The team's performance deteriorated in the 1990s and they ran into financial difficulties, with their final race being in the 1994 Australian Grand Prix. These are without a doubt the best teams in Formula One history. Some had incredible stories to tell, while others had to work hard for a long period of time to get to the top. Other teams that have left their imprint on Formula One include Team Lotus, Red Bull, Brabham, Copper, Renault, Benetton, and Tyrrell. Whatever the case may be, they have all contributed to the development of Formula One and provided us with exciting races throughout history. In Formula One, anything can happen, and we won't know which teams will make up this list in a few decades, so we'll just have to wait and enjoy the show while we wait. What is your all-time favorite Formula One team? Let us know that in the comment section below. But that's all there is for today's video. Thank you for staying with us this far, and be sure to click the notification bell to make sure you don't miss out on another upload. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And I hope to see you again in the next video.